I'm tired of being the invisible man. The invisible man. Oh, the invisible man.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to The Invisible Man. We're without Phil again today. Other priorities came up, so I had to head out early. So hi Phil. Anyway, I know you're going to be watching this. If not today, we're later. Can we risk doing introductions, Ryan?
We can try it. Why not? Let's try it. All right, here I'll kick us off here. Looking over at now, this would be screen right. Would be my good friend Mark David Stollard. He uses his middle name, even though he doesn't have to.
And this is Ryan Jans. His middle name is also David, but he doesn't use it, even though he should. And we are. It's all in the mind.
It's all in the mind. That actually worked really well.
Yeah,
probably the best we've done it when we haven't been in the same room together.
Actually, and we haven't even rehearsed that one, so that was good. So thanks everyone. We're a little bit self-indulgent with our intros, I know, but so I just want to let you know the show today. We're going to be talking about our musical influences, the things that kind of set us moving in a musical bent that got us this far. And if we have time, we've got our instruments ready to go, so we can prove that we don't just talk about music, we actually do perform and write. So we're ready to go. As and when we can bring up some examples of things that have influenced us. So that's kind of, so we have no idea really where the show's going. We've got a whole list of people we want to, acts and bands and musicians we want to talk about. Obviously, we've been absorbed with music our entire lives. So we've got lots to say and lots to talk about. And please, everybody, listening, if you have any musical influences yourself, you want to comment on what we're saying, please comment. We'll read them out, and we'll definitely, if you have any people that acts that should be called out because they were greats, please do. Okay, you can find us. So actually, we're streaming live on multiple places this time. We've actually got a few more. Just so you know, we're on the It's All in the Mind Band Facebook page, as well as my personal page, as well as the Colorado Phil Show Facebook page. We're also live streaming to the Colorado Phil's YouTube channel and the Invisible Man YouTube channel, as well as Periscope and Vaughn TV. So we're getting bigger and we're spreading out. So, and you can, of course, find links to all of that stuff on theinvisibleman.ca. So don't forget, do it now, subscribe, share, and get all your friends watching, because this is going to be a real fun show.
You bet. So, without further ado, now I don't know if there's probably lots of other people who are musicians and artists and content creators who are watching this. I don't know about you, but I hate it when someone asks me, "Hey, what's your musical, or what's your influence? Who are your influences?" I'm like, I have to pick just one? Do I tell you when I was 12? Do I tell you when I was 20? Do I tell you when I'm now in my 30s? Because that definitely changes over time. But there's stuff that we've done. So, and ironically enough, guess who suggested the show topic for today? It was me. Good job, Ryan. So I did not. I don't know. We spent what, about the better part of a week just sort of whittling it down to our musical influences, and I think it's going to be really good. From what Mark and I were talking about, I think it's going to be really relatable to anybody who's starting off or who even is, and I think we'll probably could get a really good discussion going. So please comment. Mark and I are both watching our chat feeds. Yeah. So if you want to see us mess up, send us a message when we're in the middle of talking.
Okay, so actually we'll just shout out Ken Loxton, who's our guest on the last show. Welcome to the audience, Ken. This was great to have you on last time, and he's actually quite upset that Phil's not here and suggests we fire him. So,
well, if we were paying him, we would dock him.
And Joe Cleary has joined us with a couple of his influences: Gordon Lightfoot, James Taylor, Neil Young, Cat Stevens. I had forgotten about Cat Stevens. He should have been on my list. Anyhow, let's go on with the show. So I think I've been around longer. marginally.
Yeah, you have been around
And
longer.
because when Ryan suggested that, I thought, what a good idea. I've got lots of because I've been musical, I think, as long as I can remember. I've always loved, even when I was walking home from school, before I even thought of writing stuff down, I'd be making up songs as I walked home. Um, but I think one of my early memories of music was the 1940s, 50s, 60s movies, because they always had songs in them. And I'm particularly fond of comedies as well, and because you get these guys, here we are, the Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, the road movies are still among my favorite movies. And it was the music that was in that sometimes they were just kind of tacked on, but I think Bing Crosby has such a wonderful, wonderful voice. He was able to just carry that baritone just like no one else. I think there are very few people that could hold a tune as mellow as he did.
Well,
Um,
and I think the interesting thing about him is I had a whole phase where I went through just listening to crooner music, and Bing was probably one of my favorites, is because just like you said, nobody holds that baritone just quite like him. Everybody else seems to be belting it out or pushing it out. It's almost like Bing is taking a peanut butter and spreading it just nice and smoothly across,
yeah,
and it just has that nice, wonderful. Yeah, he's just an amazing voice. He's
yeah,
kind of like Freddie Mercury and Queen. Lots of people can try, but Freddie was Freddie and Bing was
yeah,
Bing, and that's just it. We can
yeah,
get close, but we can't
yeah.
duplicate it to 100%. So
Yeah, so I don't even try to mimic him, but he's always in my mind though when I'm particularly thinking of the those those crooning songs. They're the slow ones that have a bit of emotion behind them, and yeah, he often crops up in my mind.
I,
Um,
what? Interesting enough, my favorite Bing Crosby song is a duet he did with Louis Armstrong called "Gone Fishing." I
yeah.
don't particularly
Oh,
enjoy
okay.
fishing too much, but the idea of just
Yeah.
like leaving and getting out
Yeah.
of there and doing something that you want to do, it very much resonates on a there. But just that "you've gone fishing," yeah, that's as
Yeah.
close as I'm gonna get.
Yeah.
We
For
won't do
sure.
that. There's a reason I don't sing,
Yeah. And of
or
course,
at least back.
one of the others around about the same time. Well, actually, and I just want to point out, I'm not that old. I wasn't alive in the 40s, 50s. Although I don't remember. I was alive in the 60s for a couple of years. I don't remember the 60s at all. But what we had in England, there was pretty much two channels, and then we had a third one. BBC Two came along, and in the afternoon on a Saturday, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if we weren't out playing, they'd play these old movies, and I'd hang around, wait for a comedy. And I got hooked on these guys. I got, and particularly got Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, and of course Danny Kaye as well. Absolutely brilliant all round. I mean, dancer, singer, writer. He did it all. I mean, the guy was absolute genius. And it was, I think, a lot of the Danny Kaye songs, movies were actual musicals. Right? They weren't just the straight man. Unlike the thing that was White Christmas. This picture's from, and which was more of a let's throw some songs in a movie. Danny Kaye actually had some real musicals, and the songs were actually drove the story. And yeah, I was just I always actually admire. I almost worshipped the guy really as a kid.
Mhm. Well, and even Dick Van Dyke, a great comedic actor, but did lots of
Yeah,
musical comedies and
yeah, for
stuff
sure.
like that. And another guy who had just a very unique voice, right? So,
Yeah, yep. So what are your earliest memories of music?
oh my goodness. Um, oh, now I have to really scrape the bottom of the barrel for that one. Um, I always had a really good and still do have a really good ear for music. I can pick out a melody or a particular part for music, and so I would hear music as a child, and I wouldn't know what they were, or who sang it, or what, and I didn't. That wasn't a big priority in our house, but I liked music, so I was
Yeah,
just listening to music all the time, and I would hear it, and then it would be something like 15 years later, I'd hear it, and I'd be like, I know that. Who is it? And then I'd look it up, and I'd be, oh, that's this or that. And I have a sister who's 4 years older than me, and of course, when you're when I'm 8 and she's 12 and she's listening to Bon Jovi in the sort of the mid 80s, I don't really understand what's going on. I just kind of pick out, oh yeah, that's this, and then finally figure out when I'm in my late teens, oh, that was Bon Jovi. I remember that song. Yeah, okay, yeah. My sister used to listen to that all the time with her friends and be goofy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. But my I know Dad had an eight track player. He liked the Beatles. He liked the Guess Who, probably CCR, a lot of that 60s kind of band stuff. I don't remember us having a lot of that stuff in the house except for an Elvis 8-track player. We had an 8-track player and had an Elvis. Yeah, there he is, the king of rock himself. And it was sort of like a best of, I think, or some kind of compilation, because it had Jailhouse Rock on it, but then it had like I'm gonna guess the song's called Kentucky Rain. And I remember thinking, because at the time I would have been really young, I would have been watching shows like Full House, where one of the main characters, Uncle Jesse, was played by John Stamos, absolutely adored Elvis. So it was cool for us to want to pretend to be Elvis. Of course, we were doing it just to be silly and goofy.
Sure.
You're trying to do old Kentucky Rain, right? And emulate that. Those would be some of my very early introduction to music. And of course, like any other kid, I'm going to bring out pots and pans and like a drum set and drive my mother wild.
There's something. If you didn't, there was something wrong with you. Just want to shout out there. Obviously, we can. Some people can hear us, but Catherine Amagoe is saying that our sound is not working. It looks like it's going out. So if anybody else is having trouble hearing us, please let us know. Hopefully that clears up for you, Catherine. Not much I can do other than stop and restart the stream. So I guess if no one's hearing me, they're not going to be able to reply. We'll find out, right? So hopefully we're all good.
Let's see. I'll send a message down. We actually have a couple other people who have joined on the other side here. My wife, Jessica Reeve.
Hey, Jess.
Shirley Schroeder, Floyd Bueller, David Micklefield, some friends of mine. Also, cousin of my wife, Julia Ratai, Rod Den Phillips, and Laurel Joel Epp have all joined us here on the stream. If any of you guys have problems with audio, please comment, and we will do what we can. Even if we have to start and shut down, we'll just reschedule it for 5 minutes past. So, anyways,
okay, we're good.
On the show.
Yeah. So is there anybody that isn't either influenced by Elvis or at least that they were aware of him and were affected by him, whether positively or not. For me, it wasn't so much the music, although his music was excellent, was great. It was as much the movies. I mean, I still haven't got out of the movies side of things, so it was always exciting. He was always the underdog, and he fought against the man, sang a few songs, and won the day, right, or won the girl even. Mm-hmm. And they were just exciting, as a young boy. They were exciting shows. The music was great, and lots of love and hugs and kisses at the end. Although all PG, I assure you.
Yeah,
and of course,
very very kind of wholesome. You can take you watch it.
No, I mean definitely. I mean this was BBC Two on a Saturday afternoon. So yeah, this wasn't nothing raunchy. Now. There was another singer as well in England. My mum was a big fan of this guy, Cliff Richard. He's still I think he's still recording. He's got to be pushing 80 if he's not 80 already. But he was billed as England's Elvis, and you can see why. Yeah, and again, now by this time, and this has been later in my, as I was getting older, and not teens, but getting towards like 10. Then I started listening to music a little bit more because I like the music, and Cliff Richard had some great tunes. Summer Holiday being one of those songs, and the movie Summer Holiday. What this is from is there are some engineers that work at an English bus company take a double-decker bus on a tour around Europe. So it was. So I had and it was a lot of fun. I just actually watched it again a couple of weeks ago. It has aged, but it's still some great music and some great dance numbers and stuff. So this is a real musical. So I could harp about musicals and stuff from the younger. There are lots of good examples, but I'm going to hold that. I think the next example I'll have will be some real musical influences that actually changed or actually is even today driving some of my music. Is there anything else you'd want to touch on there before I kind of move on to the next step, next piece?
Well, we kind of got out of the Hollywood influences there, which I mean, yeah, I even remember when we first started making music together. We're kind of talking about it. That's always been present with you. I enjoy movies like that. That's not really been a push on my side, but yeah, that's right. That suits you. That fits you right to a T, like a description. If someone was going to ask 3 things that you know about Mark, it'd be like Beatles, old Hollywood movies, a pint of beer, and maybe and nachos. Nachos is probably what I would say to describe.
Wings. You could have said also.
Okay,
I would have accepted wings as well. Yeah.
Insert random bar food here. Right? So.
Indeed. Yeah, actually, there's lots of bar food that would, if you just mentioned bar food, you probably would have gone.
There you go. Right. So we're good.
Yeah. So now a lot of the music that influenced me outside of what was on the small screen, even though the Hollywood movies we were watching them on a little black and white TV, which is about that big, which is probably smaller than the screen I'm watching, or almost certainly smaller than the screen than my monitor in front of me here. So my parents' record collection, and because as I hit my heading towards the teens, I really started to enjoy just putting music on to listen to it. And then, of course, we got some of the greats. Now we're talking about some of them. I've mentioned some of these guys before, but of course, you can't go anywhere without me mentioning Simon and Garfunkel. Particularly the lyrics and the melodies of Paul Simon. I mean, probably one of the most prolific singer-songwriters ever. I would say there certainly aren't many that have written as much great music as he. But there was always that Simon Garfunkel stuff. That was the only stuff I had as a kid. And of course, if you listen to Wednesday Morning 3 a.m., the album, the folk guitar just kind of captured me. And that was actually a lot of what they do. I just try and mimic what they did. You know, we go, whoop, without the pick. Right. You know, we got some couple other tunes. Right. And then there was, because we do a Kathy song as well, but just trying to learn and trying to pick out some of those songs there and wanting, you know, just loving that melody before I even picked up a guitar. And yeah, even to this day, I mean, that's one of my that's probably one of my favorite albums ever of all time. And it was on I listened to it on an old 12-inch on a little tiny record player with like 2 little tiny speakers, which was the big speaker, a big thing in our den next to the kitchen. So, you know, I mean, what's not to love? And then, of course, when they had broken up before I had, or initially broke up, because they've broken up a few times, right? So, and then it wasn't until later that I discovered Paul Simon as a solo artist. But yeah, it's that early stuff. Just trying to learn that. Just trying to figure out how does he do that stuff. And just those melodies just gripping. And while we're talking about it as well, I've got to mention this guy. Bob Dylan. One would argue, not a great voice, but he pulled it off. I mean, and it still sounds great. Some of that early stuff, and of course, it was the protest songs that kind of stand out. You know that. But for me, it was always just the word pictures he would come up with, and you're kind of trying to understand what he's really, the poetry in it. He and Paul Simon. And it was, you know, just loving to play these records over and over and over again. Of course, there were my other records as well, but these are the ones that kind of stand out, and they're still with me today, right? I mean, they're still among my favorite music.
Did we freeze?
I didn't freeze.
Oh, I had some lag on my side. I thought we had frozen up there.
Well, I was talking, so that's what matters.
Okay.
Yeah, we were.
I'll have to watch I'll watch the cast.
Yeah.
So it can be found at the invisibleman.ca if you're interested.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, I can keep going and talk about me if you want to jump in anytime.
Did you you didn't have the one up there with Chuck Berry yet, or did you?
No. Well, we're getting there.
Not there yet?
Well, you brought him up. You spoiled the surprise, but there you go.
There you go. Well, and I don't think there's anything. Okay, so we'll start talking about my influences, and I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I hadn't gone back to this part. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
I don't think there's anyone who can really be who's a fan of rock and roll, the blues, or any of that can kind of get away without saying that Chuck Berry isn't in some way, shape, or form responsible for what they like.
Yeah. I know it's
kind of the innovator of what modern rock would become. And when you trace the line from Chuck Berry doing all this really experimental stuff to the Beatles and to Led Zeppelin, to all the way even into the LA punk and New York punk scenes into the 70s, all the way up until we sort of disappeared, rock disappeared, and even some guys who probably play metal would say that Chuck Berry is one of the guys if we're going to point a finger at somebody, we're blaming you, Chuck. Started.
Yeah, I mean, it was because I mean that was obviously one of the records that my parents had, and it's really kind of difficult to know who I fell in love with first. Was it because I'm renowned for being the ultimate Beatles fan. Love those guys. But I had these records around at the time, and the Beatles covered a lot of several Chuck Berry songs. So, and actually, if you actually listen, they do something a little bit different. It's not actually the same. You kind of think. I remember thinking, "Oh, Beatles are just copying what Chuck Berry," but Chuck Berry would do rock and roll music, and Route 66. He'd do a version of that. I'm not sure if he wrote it. Did he write it? But he really mellows that one. He comes in soft, as opposed to the Stones are making a rock song, right?
Right.
And he just kind of smooths into a little bit more of a kind of a jazz kind of sheen. It's not really a jazzy song, but he just has that little bit of mellow on his voice. Whereas the Beatles and the Stones, who have covered his material, come at it as a bit more of a harder edge.
Yeah. That's another one too. I agonized over. I don't want to say agonized. When I say agonized, please say it was. I didn't lose sleep over this or anything, but I certainly did put a little bit more time and effort into thinking and trying to whittle down what sort of my top genres would be, my top 5 bands, and how did I miss the Rolling Stones?
Yeah, no kidding.
Mostly because I went through a big phase of really just listening to classic rock music, and the Stones were pretty prominently played in Winnipeg on Winnipeg classic rock stations, and I think I sort of had like a tawdry love affair with them, and where it was like it's done and it's over, and there's only like a few Stones songs that I can really stomach to listen to, and it's not give me it's not Give Me Shelter, which recently got famous because of the Scorsese film.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Stones fan, but I mean, definitely for me they were a little too on the blues side rather than the pop. The Beatles were, or at least at the start, they were a bit more of a pop group. And I liked the close harmonies, and that's another one of those things, of course, with the Simon Garfunkel as well, as those inventive harmonies that they're obviously known for. So it's so that's
we actually have some comments from a friend of mine who also joined our stream, Luke Nolan. He comes back and he agrees with you about Bob Dylan. He says, yes, as a songwriter, as a musician, no, but he does agree with your statements. And apparently, he was a real dick. That's Luke. That's a quote from Luke.
Well, he may well have been, but I'm probably never going to meet him, so I guess it doesn't really matter. and he's not running for public office. So,
well, and you know what? He might have mellowed in his old age, or is he still alive? Did he kick it? No,
I think he's still alive. Yeah, someone's going to tell
Yeah.
us. I just wanted a quick shout out to Carla Bonnell. She's just giving it a quick watching us for a few minutes before she heads out to work. So, I'm sorry you have to work on a Saturday, Carla, but thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. So, and Luke also brings up with her his comment saying you could lump Neil Young into that too. Now, Neil Young would be a good forerunner to the era that I grew up in. They often refer to him as the granddaddy of grunge, and that's really where when I turned about 13, 14 years old, I was catching the sort of the whip crack end of the grunge movement, which was sort of like a post-rock, post-punk kind of everything sucks and angry. Which actually brings us up. We could actually throw up that picture of the Stone Temple Pilots there. Luke or Mark. Sorry.
Yep.
Name's going through my head right now.
Here we go.
There we go. The Stone Temple Pilots.
And so those of you who I just want to add, just for those of you who are not familiar with this band, the guy on the left is not Doctor Who. That's not Christopher Eccleston. All right.
That's right. That's Dean DeLeo, and his brother is on the actual opposite side of him of the picture. Dean DeLeo and is it Marty DeLeo? Dean played bass and Marty played guitar, and Eric Krantz was the drummer, and that is Scott Whalen in the middle with the flower on his lapel, or I think that's what it is. It could be anything. It's Scott Whalen, not part of the Whalen-Yutani Company. That is a different set of creative influences. That's the Alien franchise, which we could start a whole channel on sci-fi, because I'm sure Mark and I could talk for hours on that as well.
Possibly. Yes.
Anyways, so the reason I kind of whittled them down is I actually got to see these guys perform before Scott Whalen passed away. I would say it's probably 2007 or 2008. I'm trying to go. It's one of those years. One of those summers we went off to like a music festival many years ago, and I actually got to see them, and they were actually quite good. And the thing is, they were actually one of the only bands out of that 1990s grungy era that was still together, producing records. They're actually signed to a major label, and we're usually more about independent music, but they have a very in the 90s it was also very independent feel, so you get like a major record that would say here's 60K, go make your record how you want, we don't care, just make us money. And that was kind of how the attitude was. These guys had a really unique sound and really somewhere between heavy and somewhere between rock, and produced some really good songs, really memorable songs, like Interstate Love Song and Dead and Bloated, which funny story, that's a song you probably heard on the radio, and it starts off where it's just his vocals, and he goes, I am smelling like a rose that somebody gave me on my birthday deathbed. So the other, that's such a 90s,
That was excellent. I wasn't expecting the vocalization today. I was expecting
exactly.
I was expecting some bass riffs, but yeah, well.
I wasn't expecting to do it either, but it goes on. So anyways, I was in a band, I've mentioned them many times here, the Small Town Antics, good friends of mine, and we had sort of a heavier sound, and we're struggling to put in some covers. What could we play that isn't too light, and we don't want to spend hours and days and months and years metalizing like a Britney Spears song for jokes. We actually want to be serious. What's a good song that most people at like the Cavern or other heavy metal places would have heard of? Oh, Stone Temple Pilots. Yeah, we all love them. That's great. So we practiced, and like it cleared the dance floor. We started to play that song, and it cleared the dance floor. We had people looking at us like, what's the music? It was like, oh man. It was terrible. But but a great band, had great longevity, and really had a unique sound. They weren't always heavy, they weren't always grungy. If you do check out Interstate Love Song, you probably find it on YouTube or streaming service or something like that. You'll find it isn't like a typical 90s grunge song, which is what separated
Right.
them from a lot of them, and probably what separated them out, saying that yeah, you can touch on that, but you don't have to be only grunge, and you don't have to play by these sets of rules, and
Yeah.
it's good to grow musically and have talent
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully that's coming across too with our examples that we're bringing up. That we are all over the place, right? We do listen to a lot of stuff. I know actually, yeah, and there's probably a whole load as well that I could have added on the list. It's just my list is so long as it is. So when I started started playing music. The reason I started learning to play guitar, I had piano lessons like everybody else, and I had drum lessons as well. Although I had drum lessons, but my parents didn't buy me a drum kit. I had a practice pad, and well, you're a kid, and I want to smash the drums, so I didn't practice, and so they stopped giving the lessons. But when I was about 15, there was this girl at a youth club, and she was playing guitar, and I've been sweet on her for a while. And I said, well, bring me a guitar. Let's see. Show me something. I had no real interest in learning. And she goes, oh, here we are. Just this is an E, and then we'll do a bit of flamenco. And she showed it to me, and I'm thinking, I'm going, and I went, I'll just do this. I'll just, just try to chat her up a little bit. And I'm like, oh, this is easy. I can do this. And so I metaphorically actually locked myself in the bedroom with the guitar for about a year or so, and I came out reasonably competent and playing in bands, and that was actually when I started trying to copy and trying to figure out how Chuck Berry did. Oh, I fumbled. Right, I didn't practice that, but here we go. And I was sitting there with the record and just making it slowly. Rewind the record and just hear that next. What's that next note? It was. So that is just kind of how it just kind of happened. There was no intention, and then I realized once I had a guitar, I can now suddenly record. I had a way. It hadn't occurred to me to record the songs before, or to write them down that I was making. I was a kid, and now suddenly it was. Hey, I can do what I had been doing for probably a decade, walking home from school, making up songs, and now I had a way of capturing them in my, in my memory, and we can, now I can repeat them, and the guitar became the way I recorded my songs. Right, it helped, and then of course all the influences started coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. And I, as many people know, I'm a bass player. I hinted to my 6th string back here when we said we would play, and yes, I fully intend to lay down a few things for you later on today, especially when I've got one. I'll try not to. Well, maybe I'll let Mark spoil the beans. All of my stuff really kind of fits together, but there is one real standout piece of music that or genre that. Maybe you might not expect, and that's when I'll sort of start playing a little bit more of the stuff for you there. For me, starting listening to a lot of grunge, obviously probably starting earlier with that glam rock metal that my older sister would listen to, and
yeah, that was the pop music right through the early 70s when I started listening, and I didn't really like it too much.
Yeah, and you know what?
Sticking with my parents' music.
Okay, so let's be honest. You're sitting on a road trip and you're driving from Winnipeg to Brandon and you're blasting Bon Jovi. That's a good time. Am I going to turn on a Bon Jovi tune at any other given time? No, because I'm just going to be. It's a waste of past time, and it's wonderful to do it with friends, or maybe if you want to do that for karaoke or something as a good laugh. That's great. I don't particularly find Bon Jovi's music compelling that way. It would be fun to see them in concert. I'm sure it was a wicked show, right?
Yep.
Anybody in the comments seen Bon Jovi or any other hair metal like Poison or any of those other guys who were in the hair metal in there, go right on ahead and put your experiences down in the comments. That'd be great. Um, so it's logical for me to kind of stay in that sort of grunge was kind of birthed out of punk, and punk is kind of where I stayed for a long time. Right, that's kind of what I listened to: punk, and then eventually ska. So there's two that we'll put up. First, let's put up the picture for No Doubt. Mark.
Here we go. I knew who you were talking to.
Yeah. as I'm struggling with names again. So No Doubt, when the album Tragic Kingdom came out, I was 15 years old, 14 or 15 years old, and that's probably the album that, because here's the thing about punk music: you listen to punk music, and a lot of it is angry, upset. I'm mad at the government. I'm mad at my parents. I'm mad at my this. It's aggressive. It's good, and it's really good cathartic, like therapy, right? I'm not saying that should be your only therapy. You should go see a therapist if you need therapy. But I mean, if you want to listen to angry music to help take the edge off for a few minutes, that's okay. That's fine. This really showed me that you could take um, punk themes and not be angry with them, and you could mix in. It was okay now to not just have heavy distortion. You could throw in some synthy sounds. You could play punky and aggressive, but you didn't have to be like, I hate the world, and I have safety pins through my nose, and I have this and that, and it's like, but you can see like the varied styles that are there, and of course, we all know that Gwen Stefani is very like vocal about her own thing. You got your one guy who's got his hair pumped up like as he's a punk rock drummer, but then you got guys wearing polo shirts, right? Kind of sneaking around the corner. Eric Stefani, who was Gwen's, I want to say, older brother, and played keyboards for them for a number of years. And then Tony Canal, who's the bass player and at one time love interest of Gwen Stefani. Yes, I'm showing my nerddom here for for No Doubt. But they were a band that seriously took me. And Tony, as a bass player, as I'm a bass player, Tony's bass player, I'm like, hey, this guy's not just playing the same four notes as the rest of the band. He's walking. He's playing octaves. He's at one point he sort of does a little bit of a slap stuff, and I've never been able to get that really as a technique, but really learning, hey, this is walking. And so of course when you listen to someone who does a walking bass, you inevitably get into things like jazz and blues jazz and stuff like that. So this was the band that kind of splintered it for me, where I was like, okay, well, I can like punk and I can listen to jazz and I can listen to big band music, and I probably listen to crooners because you listen to ska and it's like, hey, there's horns and there's jazzy stuff, and it's like, that sounds like this song, and I can listen to, there's Frank Sinatra, and here's Dean Martin, and all those different Sammy Davis Jr., and you can listen to some of those things and respect them as musicians and the musical talents. So I would have to say, if there was a center point, it was probably these guys. And I certainly have a couple of songs that I've recorded. We have one that was called Disco's Not Dead, and that started out of a song that was called Motown originally, that I had done with another band called the Screamin' Fleas. And that leads us into, let's put it up there, the big one, the surprise of the day, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, there it is. So, you're gonna see the next two ones sort of make sense when we show up those pictures. But Earth, Wind, and Fire. Now, why did I pick Earth, Wind, and Fire? Well, obviously, I'm listening to walking basses, and of course, you're gonna get into funk music eventually when you get into some of that funky bass stuff that Tony does, and you learn that out. Why Earth, Wind, and Fire? Because Earth, Wind, and Fire is the one band I can take one of their albums, either on a streaming service or if it's downloaded, or buy the album and listen it straight, cover to cover, start to finish, right? Kool and the Gang would fit into that. There's all sorts of other funk bands that kind of happened through the 70s and 80s. This is the one that I can listen to straight end to end, right? Probably listen and not really get too sick of it. There's lots of wonderful bands, like I said, Cool and the Gang. That's the only one that's coming to mind now because I'm stalling here. But
Captain
Earth,
and
Wind, and
Tennille.
Fire is the
Captain and
is the
Tennille.
one. What's that? Sorry.
Captain and Tennille.
Yeah. Like Captain and Tennille.
There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, moving on, I guess. So let me jump up here. Okay, so here is actually there's a couple of minor influences. I know I've listened to a lot of different kinds of music, and I've enjoyed lots of different kinds of music, and I tend to focus. I identify with Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, but there are a lot of people that have had probably a more subtle effect than I hadn't probably realized how big an effect they had at the time. But this is one guy, Ralph McTell. He did a song. It was a big song that was big in the 60s. Was a protest song called "Streets of London." Now, if I can pull it out here, I'll give that a shot there. Let me take you by the hand and lead you through the streets of London. We'll throw something that'll make you change your mind. Right, that'll give you a taste of it. Skip straight to the chorus. And that's actually just that guitar style. Realizing, looking back on it, that there's a lot of that picking that I do influenced directly by the English folk musicians that I also was listening to after I started to, because once I started playing guitar, I started listening to guitar music. And so this guy, very, very influential, probably even to young children as well, because he actually sang the opening theme to Postman Pat.
Which, funny enough, when Mark told me this, I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." And he's like, "Hey, you probably know him from Postman Pat." And guess who remembered that song? Yeah.
And his black and white cats, yeah. And then there was another, I would say, minor influence, but again, this may well be a massive influence if I'm going to dig deep. But there's this guy. I was not a massive David Bowie fan. I mean, I liked some of his singles. But there's one little piece that I've always loved from Space Odyssey is when he does the. I'm going to turn this over so I get my things in order. So. And I always loved that. I thought, what's such a clever little piece, just major chords, and it just works so well. And I thought, well, I wanted to do something like that as well. And so consciously, I actually added something similar to one of our songs, right? It was, it's not just the way she looks at me, not just that sparkle in her eye. And that's kind of directly intentionally Bob Dylan. David Bowie.
David Bowie.
That was David Bowie. And I bet you if I listen to the David Bowie anthology, I can almost say that I could pick a little bit out of all of my songs and say, oh yeah, I bet that was influenced by that. I can see some similarities in it.
It's interesting when we did Strawberry Fields Forever. We do Strawberry Fields Forever as a cover.
Yep.
And usually when we do that, because a lot of the song is played backwards, and you can really only do that in our studio, we had to figure out ways to make it a similar effect. Now, I don't have the pedal here. If I was more prepared, I could have my bass set up and do it. But I immediately thought of like, okay, how can we cross this over? And I have a reverse option on one of my pedals. And when I play it, so if I can just turn up here, I don't think we're hearing it, are we?
Nope. Not yet. There we go.
So this bass has a pretty decent little sustain, or not a sustain on it. But if I put a reverse pedal on it, it kind of has this little, it has a soft sort of, instead of that normal, it's really difficult to expect. But I was thinking of the string section in Space Odyssey. and how that would overlap with what we were trying to do. So
Right. Yeah.
Bowie actually influenced our cover of the Beatles. So
Nice. Yeah, I didn't know that. So I'm learning stuff as well. This is good. Yeah.
yeah. So since you got to show off a little bit, I'll show off a few of the little things that I felt like I was influenced on.
Yeah.
So when I was talking about Tony Canal from No Doubt and the kind of music that he with the walk downs and stuff like that, that would be something along the lines of like this is all going to be played the song called Motown that eventually morphed into what we call Disco Is Not Dead. So it kind of would go, so a lot of stuff like so instead of just doing a
Ryan, turn up the bass a bit if you can. Turn it up a bit louder. Yeah.
how's that?
There you go. A little clearer. Yeah.
Better?
We can hear it, but it was just
So
quiet.
instead
Yeah.
of just playing your root notes like this, we can move the song along and do stuff like this. And to give it a nice big flourish, we can do, which is a little bit more of a Earth, Wind, and Fire feel to it. So now
you
you
go.
can sort of play the musical, connect the dots. So
Yeah.
so hopefully that makes a little bit more sense the next time
Yeah.
you guys see us playing it. Well, welcome to the show. A couple extra people who are joining us late: Christy Weeb, Madison Danuska Dejanay.
Maddie.
We haven't seen you for
Yeah.
Loft Days. Hi, Madison.
Yeah, how you
Great to see
doing?
you.
Nice to see you. Our
And
photographer.
Dana
She was our photographer.
our-
Yeah.
is our we have some great shots that you can deep find us. She braved going out on the river to take shots of us when we played live.
Mhm.
Great to see you, Maddie.
That's right.
And Dana Charbon. Sorry, Dana, if I've pronounced your name wrong. I am famous for that, so don't worry. I do it to everyone. Great to see you again. Just friends of friends joining us here.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
And-
you got to see Mark and I play our instruments instead of us just complaining about being musicians.
And a shout hello to Pauline Santoro as well for joining us. Oh,
Well, that's
Okay.
probably me on my guitar here.
no, we're good. I didn't hear anything, so we're fine. Just getting all sort of. Yeah, we don't have the usual interview question and answers planned, so yeah, we're bringing in our instruments and just getting under each other's or under our own feet because we're in our own places today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that the song we do, "Disco Isn't Dead," was actually a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek song, as it was really a married couple whose kids are shouting and fighting each other, want to go out for the evening, and that's kind of the basis of it. And so this couple doesn't want to go out for beer and wings again, so let's go dancing. And so they go to a nightclub, and it's too loud, and they don't really like it. And of course, the idea, the chorus, I think, was when I see you dancing, I know disco isn't dead. That was kind of the punchline of the
And then we
chorus.
followed up with a big flow.
Yeah, so it's
A
kind of a little
nice
tongue in cheek, but yeah, it's definitely a song for that middle-aged people would probably identify with. No, actually, I'm tempted to come and join in with you there, but the lag will probably kill us if we try and do something.
Oh yeah, no, we're not. No. Until we have dedicated ISBNs between us, I don't think.
That's right. No, just get a fiber connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think there's only one. Oh no, I guess there's a couple of people we haven't talked about. Buddy Holly, and so this is the album I remember listening to as a kid. I just happened to just looking up for pictures and then went, that's the one. That's what I used to listen to. And of course, the all-time great is, of course, we mentioned them already, was the Beatles. I'm going to pull that up just in case you don't know who they are. It's quite possible. There we go.
Unless we are living in that world where the Beatles didn't exist.
Yeah.
The interesting movie.
Yeah, and I spent my entire life trying to learn the entire Beatles catalogue. Well, maybe not quite as many, you know. Listen, do you want to know a secret? Right. Yeah, I know them all. Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to. So trying to remember what key. I think it was an F, right? I knew.
Yeah, that's all right.
F sharp, yeah, I forget what it is. Yeah, so I would say I probably spent more time actually trying to learn the songs that these guys performed, probably more than any other band. Listening to the songs, learning them inside out, and actually learning the harmonies as well. So not just singing along, with the lead, but just trying to figure out, okay, how do they do that? They sounds like there's like 4 people singing, but there's only 3, and just the way those harmonies overlap, and you go, wow. Just trying to figure out how they do it. So definitely the band, the biggest soul influence on me for sure. Anyhow, you brought it up, so I had to say it.
So there you go. That's Mark's No Doubt right there.
No doubts.
My biggest band for pushing me into learning and wanting to be a better musician was No Doubt. It was the Beatles for Mark.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. That was Mark's No Doubt.
Yeah.
I guess we can't get away from it. I did play in a hard rock and a heavy metal band, so a lot of that stuff kind of gets thrown in a lot of ways. One of the biggest heavy metal bands that influenced me was Megadeth. So Dave Mustaine there, curly blonde hair in the middle, looking like you owe him some money. He was originally actually in the band Metallica, nicknamed Dangerous Dave, back in the early days when it was normal to do cocaine off your amplifier in the middle of a show and follow it up with a chaser of whiskey. Eventually was booted from the band, and went on to form his own. And Megadeth and Metallica fought tooth and nail for years, playing off each other and playing against each other. And I'm sure, I don't know if that bad blood has ever healed or not, but they both have been relatively successful bands. I don't think Megadeth is touring or doing anything right now. I know Metallica still is. So if we're talking about that kind of musical success, but so having understood that I could do all those different things, what are some of the things that how did I bring that into the metal scene and the metal music that I was doing? Well, a lot of the songs that we're doing would be a lot like this. Would be like, right, just trying to keep that, but be trying to let's do something more like be like trying to just move it, but not be stagnant on that one note, because one, it's boring to play, and two, it just adds that little bit of extra something. Bass isn't necessarily always prominent in metal. Sometimes it is when you start off, or when you're starting a song, or when you're doing a song. It has those moments. So there was one song that we did was called "Inside These Walls," and it was, there's a section where we're just doing quick hits, but I would keep the music going because it just seemed like it was lagging, and it'd be like. It's been a while since I played it, and that just came to mind, so I didn't really have a chance to play it. That actually played mostly right. Yeah. But just having a chance to sort of play as much as I can across the neck, it just adds a little bit of something extra. And sometimes that's right, and sometimes that's wrong. That's one thing that I've had to learn as a musician. I think Mark will agree. We'll write a song, and I'll start playing everything I can. I'll try and jam everything I can into it, and then I'll start taking stuff away and see what fits best. Yeah. And I think that's just my normal process in writing and creating. Let's get everything in there. Let's not ignore anything, and then we'll start taking stuff away. Yeah. So, okay, I have this, and I have that, and I have this and this, and then we eventually end up with it. And then sometimes we have things like there's a song that we had written where it was called "Buy Me," and it was all about crooked politicians wanting to be bought. And then Mark, and he would say, "Buy me." There we go. And then I just emulated that. Those two notes in the melody of the chorus, and it just worked out great. It just married great. That's right. That bing, bing. Where would I pull that out of? Probably somewhere in the grunge area, where they would have done their solos as a cops of the melody. Maybe, I don't know, but that's definitely stuff that I would have gotten from. And of course, the last one, we'll just throw it up there because I have mentioned the punk scene a lot. Rancid is probably the main punk band that I've listened to the most. Again, mostly because I can listen to their music, and it isn't just about I'm angry. They have reasons to be angry. There's lots of times where they're singing about being young and broke, being young and a punk, and everybody hating you because you're a punk, not because you've done anything or because it's just that, hey, this is my standpoint and people hate me, so they write a song about it.
Right,
They write
yeah.
about songs about friends who overdose from shooting up in a bathroom, right? I mean, how do you write a song about that? That's not at all a part of my experience. But so you're writing interesting lyrics as well as being in that point where it's like, no, I'm not going to stand up. I'm not going to get pushed around by, you know, the government or whatever, you
Yeah.
know, that punk scene thing. So, and they wrote good music. They wrote really good music. If you're wondering what a popular Rancid song was, if you listen to Ruby Soho, that's it. Destination unknown, Ruby, 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 Ruby Soho, and that other one, white coat, black hat, Cadillac, hey, the boy, the time bomb, right? And
Yeah.
all through that one, they have a bass line that's moving through, and it's a walk. It's like a do 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 do. I don't know it, so I'm not going to play it, no matter how nicely you guys ask.
Do it live. Do it live for the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Might as well be as any. But they're writing songs about a kid who has to make money because he's poor, and now he's decided to hustle drugs, and now he's in too deep and he can't get out.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like you're writing songs. Yeah, it's upsetting, and they're angry, but they're angry for a reason, right? You're not just angry because you're angry. So there's that, and punk was probably what pushed me into the whole DIY scene, anyways, because nobody wanted to record punk music, right? So that whole DIY,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's get a half working, broken down board and plug it into this and get something working, and then we'll get that, and then we'll add to it and see what we can do. So that I very much have a lot of things to say about that. That genre would have shaped me more, maybe not so much in the music that I wrote, but in the attitude towards how I'm going to create music.
Yeah.
And have a very late joiner here, a good friend of mine, longtime friend of mine since I was really young. We've actually played together in bands and did a few different projects together. Tim Penner, nice to see you.
Hi, Tim.
Congratulations on your, I guess not newest born, but a newborn baby that is there. But you could
Congratulations.
So.
Hey. Okay, so I think we're kind of winding down. Now might be a good time to just kind of start closing. Where we go? Let's get that back there. Just so everyone knows, Phil, actually, I'm mumbling now. There we go. So you can find us, you can contact us, info@theinvisibleman.ca, and that'll actually, we'll reply if you email us there. If you have any questions, comments, if you're interested in appearing on the show as a special guest, please let me know. And you can hit me up on Facebook if we're friends, or email is probably best if we're not friends. On Facebook. www.theinvisibleman.ca has links to pretty much everything. And we are, by the way, now live on pretty much every podcast app or platform. So we have some past shows going up, and then this one will go up audio only, as the other podcasts are. But you can go listen to those, and of course you can check us out on YouTube. And the easiest way to get there is just the Invisible Man. .ca/YouTube. Oh, Shaleem's a little late. You are a bit late, Shaleem. We're actually just closing up. But thanks for joining us. Do appreciate it.
You can always catch the restream or the repost at on our invisibleman.ca/YouTube. And are we on vwradio.co?
No, that's Phil. So Colorado Phil Show is on vwradio.co, not .com, so .co. So go check him out. You can also just keep following us on on Facebook as well, the Colorado Phil Show, and It's All in the Mind Band as well. And you can hit me and Phil up on Twitter if you want to make a note of those IDs. Phil's a bit more active than I am, but I am on there from time to time. Okay, so thanks everyone there. I think that was all we've got. So check out. We have a so check us out on the podcast. We have a new one that we just released. Was Two Guys Fixing the World. We have a rule: no religion or politics unless it directly intersects with music. And because we like talking politics, we actually decided to start a new podcast. So check that one out as well. Was it fixingtheworld.ca? Lots of links on there, and as we become available on more podcasting platforms, then that will be available on the website. So little shameless plug for us as well.
Oh, why not?
Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a great show. Some nice, nice interaction between everybody in the comments. So if you did comment and we missed it, I do apologise. We'll kind of go back and see if we can find any there if we did. But thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your spending this time with us and our little, I guess, ended up being a self-indulgent show, but we had fun, and I think I learned some stuff about you as well, Ryan. So it's all been good. So
suddenly it makes sense, right?
Yeah,
suddenly,
I was like, yeah. It's funny, yeah, because you know what's going through your own head. You never know what's going on inside someone else's. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye, and we'll see you. I think on the 2nd of November we have Load. So both Luce and Kyle are going to be on the show, and they're going to be talking about Cannabis Castle. So that'll be kind of interesting as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Oh.